Most phones now are 4K, they're very good quality, they've got autofocus, so there's no excuse of saying, well, I haven't got the right kit yet. Lighting and sound is more important to me than the camera that we use.
We're still quite early in AI, but right now you definitely can't trust it.
Hey, and welcome to Podfathers, a show for businesses looking to create captivating podcasts, long-form content, and reels to help them grow their businesses. Because at the end of the day, content is king. I'm Deren.
And I'm Tolu, and this week we are going to be talking about DIY setups. So whether you're at home, at the office, in your business, how can you set up to record really high quality podcasts?
Absolutely, and we're talking about everything to do with the kit that you can use, the lighting, the sound, the cameras, and even the software as far as things like AI to edit your videos. AI, that little thing that's just kind of come out. That nobody knows about. So we're going to talk to you about everything to do with that, so you can create your own podcast studio at home, but hopefully in a more premium way than just using your 720p camera attached to your laptop. So should we get into it, Tolu?
Yeah, I think what's really important for me is that you can't necessarily, when you have guests, for example, you can't control their setups. You can't control what their background looks like. And if you're going to be having lots of different guests, it's always going to be different. But what's important is that you can control yours. You know, so you can have a really high quality looking setup, and that can be the anchor for your online podcast as well. So I think that's really important to think about. Yeah,
and you can embarrass your guest even more by not keeping up to you. But actually, just having the knowledge to have a good quality setup, you can give advice to your interviewees to say, oh, just make sure you've got your lighting here, or your sound, you know, your mouth is close to your microphone, things like that. So it does give you that knowledge to brief your guests, so you do get the most out of it. Because not everyone's going to use a studio setup where everything's done for them. No. Some people want more control as well, so they want a DIY setup that caters to their business. And this is for anyone that's, you know, if you're working from home, if you've got a massive you work in a massive office block, or you work in your back garden, that you can just buy the right kit. Because we've seen so many people buy the wrong kit, invest thousands of pounds, and then we're like, you don't need that, or that should actually be here, and you've already wasted thousands of pounds. So for us, hopefully we can give you more insight on things like the cameras to buy, the sound, the lighting, to save you some money as well. And I think we're going to put in our cheat sheet as well, and our resources, sort of the good, the better, and the best options for everything, depending on everyone's budgets. And you can also build up on that as well. And
and something really random that I heard that someone does is that when they have a guest, they send them like a little care package.
100%.
That's got some like little lights in it, maybe a little mic, that kind of stuff. So depending on the budget that you have, and also it's a bit of an investment as a business as well, is to send someone a nice little care package where you can then help get their setup a little bit better.
Yeah, and if you can't afford to do that and buy it for every single guest, you can almost just send it to them. They send it back to you, just put a return label on it, pay the return postage. So it doesn't cost you a huge amount. You've invested in one piece of kit, one care package, or two as a backup because something will get broken. And then just send that out to your guests. That's because it also looks like you care, rather than just expect them to know how to use Riverside or Zoom if you're still using Zoom. You're kind of giving them that cheat sheet and the cheat equipment to make sure the quality of your interviews is the best it can be.
I love that. So let's get into some of the equipment. So you're really, really good with the equipment side of things. I'm a bit more on the software side of things. So that's probably how this episode is going to be a little bit split. So I would love to hear a little bit about the cameras that people can start to use, and what should people be looking for.
So if we're going to go with good, we can talk about accessibility, and we can talk about the fact that everyone in their pockets has got a phone. Most phones now are 4K, they're very good quality, they've got autofocus, so there's no excuse of saying, well, I haven't got the right kit yet. You can just bring your phone out and you can record fairly good footage off the back of that, especially if you've got good lighting. If you're talking about cameras, even a good DSLR, if you know how to use that, Sony A7S cameras, again, depending on the budget. So this is going to change and be open to interpretation, which is why we've got the resources and the cheat sheet, so we can change that. And if there's any special offers on certain cameras, we'll put that in the cheat sheet as well, so you can keep up to date. But I think having a good tripod, having a good camera is vital. If that means just having your iPhone or your Samsung, whatever the latest one is, you can just utilize that.
And I think what I've noticed over the years is that they're putting a lot more settings on phones. So, for example, we were talking about cinematic mode earlier and things like that, where that does a lot of the work for you in setting up something that looks really good.
It can even make me look beautiful in cinematic mode. Everything looks beautiful in cinematic mode, doesn't it? Because again, there's such an emphasis from these manufacturers everyone's going down the video route, so they need to cater for that. So they're all competing now, not on storage size or everything else. It's more about how good can we get these videos. And some of the footage you can get on these cameras nowadays is absolutely insane. And you don't need to know a huge amount about filming. No. Whereas sometimes if you've got a DSLR that's a bit more complicated to use, you need to learn how to use that properly. Otherwise, it can look very, very bad.
Yeah. Because so much of it is about the person that's holding it, and now they're taking a little bit of that out, because I'm not very good at filming, but some of the videos I've taken with cinematic mode look absolutely amazing, and now they're making it so that actually the phone does most of the work for you. You don't have to know all the stuff. And
we spoke about that in episode 1, is removing the friction. And now manufacturers are, and if you haven't watched episode 1, go back to episode 1, it was epic. They can remove the friction because they know that people of all ages are using their phones. You've got some 11-year-olds creating some epic short films just using their phones. So there's no excuse not to be able to create a video podcast, because you've got a phone in your pocket. Chances are it's an iPhone 11 onwards, iPhone 13 onwards, whatever it is. Put that on a decent tripod, cost you 15 quid on Amazon, and start recording.
And lighting is the next one, and for me personally that's a really big one, as I'm quite dark skinned, so lighting is really important. Talk to us a bit about lighting.
I come from a filmmaking video production background, so for me, never underestimate the power of lighting, because you can have the best camera in the world. If we turn this light off above us, it's going to look utter like you shot on a potato basically. So you are helping yourself and the equipment you use. You can buy cheap equipment to film on if you've got good lighting. You can get away with it, balances each other out. It's almost mapping out what you want that frame to look like. We can remove that fireplace, gone, replace it with a TV. We can remove that light over there, replace it with something else. So it's designing that entire set so it fits the character of your business, your personality. And lighting plays a huge part. We can put LED strips, we can put upstanding lights. We've got other prop lights as well. And I think you should never underinvest in the lighting that you use, because it just means you can get away with a lot more on the camera. So.
And what we'll actually do is we'll create a bit of a video where we go around the studio, turn off some of the lights, and people can see and understand, because I think that was one of the things I really struggled with, is understanding the angles of the lights, what the different things do, how to create an atmosphere with the lighting. So what we'll do is, separate to this, we'll create another little video where people can see the impact that different lights within the studio have.
Because people don't realise it's so subtle, but if I was to turn away that backlight on you, and you've kind of lost that ring around the shape, you've lost a lot of shape on the camera,
right? And
just putting one little light there makes a huge difference. So like you said, we'll create a little separate video bonus episode where we turn off one light at a time, so you can see the impact that one small light has made on the final frame on that side on the camera. I think I'm looking forward to doing that one.
Yeah, I am as well, because I didn't learn any of this growing up. So for me, this is going to be really cool to see. And I think that'll probably be a YouTube only episode though, because audio, that doesn't make any sense.
100%. Yeah.
Make videos, people.
I think we've covered that already. Video podcasts are the way to go, 100%. I think even the first time we met, you gave me your floor plan for your room, for your podcast room. And one of the main emphasis I had was where the lighting goes and what lighting to put. I don't even care about the camera you use, because you can make any camera do a good job by having good lighting. And you can make a very sexy frame by just having LED lights and neon and just little subtle practical lighting that has a huge impact as well.
Absolutely. And what about microphones?
So again, this goes back to having the good, the better, and the best. So depending on your budget, obviously if you look at Shure, never sure how to say that. Sure. That brand there, every podcast seems to be using either Shure or Rode mics, and they're very good. Typically, you would have to have your mic about here, right up close to your mouth, so it picks up, because it doesn't have the right sensitivity. We use broadcast quality Sennheisers, so it can be over here. It's still going to pick everything up. But even having things like lav mics, we'll talk about that in the resources. Having a little lav mic there doesn't cost a huge amount of money, but the impact that sound has, again, on the camera side, does complement what people are watching. And it doesn't matter about the value that you're providing. If you've got crap quality sound, no one's going to sit through 45 minutes of that. And if you've got crap quality lighting, you can get away with it, because people just kind of switch off, have it in the background, they'll listen to it. But yeah, lighting and sound is more important to me than the camera that we use.
I think that sound, so I use a Shure mic for mine, and I didn't know when I bought it how close you had to be. And the closer that you get to it, the more like rich the sound is. Yep. And you really want that rich sound. So that was one of the things that I knew that they were good microphones, and I bought one of those, but you really have to be so close to it. So depending on the type of person you are, and like you see, I use my hands quite a bit and stuff like that. So it's quite awkward, but I think it's really important to know about things like the distance you can have it and how it will still pick up when you're creating your setup.
I'm still going to point out in episode 1 you smacked that mic at least 4 times.
I'm
it's not
so
even close
sorry.
but you're not.
But
exactly,
I'm 6'6". My arms are long.
I thought I'd mention that though. So yeah, sound is absolutely vital. So you do need to invest in good quality mics, good quality lighting as well, and then you can get away with using an iPhone. The benefit of having more expensive cameras is that you have more features to play with to then remove even more friction in the editing stage. So, but then that's investing in better lenses. It's not just the camera body; it's the lenses that come with it as well. We could have that amazing £5,000-6,000 camera there, but if I put a crap cheap lens on it, I've removed all the features and capability of that camera body. So it's how much you want to invest in having that equipment to take away the friction.
Yeah, and I think if you are going to buy expensive equipment, this sounds really basic, but you have to make sure you know how to use all the features you're paying for. We have this concept of like all the gear but no idea.
Yep.
And to be honest, even with the Shure mic at the beginning, that was me. I had this great microphone, didn't really understand how to do the gain, the equalizer, all of those types of things. So yes, we all want like really high spec equipment, but do you actually know how to use all those features? And make sure that you can learn how to use all those things, because otherwise you're not going to get the most out of it.
And you can make a £300 microphone sound like a £20 eBay toy.
Yeah.
By not knowing the right
I have
settings.
done that many times.
And that's one of the things that I think we said about studio setup compared to home setup before, or office setup, is by the time you've bought all the kit, you then have to do a ratio of, is it worth doing it at home ourselves, learning the knowledge to get the best out of that equipment, invest in that equipment, or do you just go to a studio? I'm not saying to our Cheeky Monkey Video studio, but to your local studio, because they've already invested in that kit. They already have that knowledge where you can just turn up, sit with your guests and get the most out of that episode that you're shooting.
Yeah, I remember the first time I was a guest on someone else's podcast, and they do studio only. And I remember the first time I experienced that, I was like, wow, this is how the other half lives. I was like, wow, it's amazing.
But it's also not a huge investment when you actually break down how much kit you'd have to buy to replicate that same setting. But we're steering off course. I'm steering off course, because let's get back into actually doing this at home. So yeah, never underestimate the lighting and the sound. We are going to give you a cheat sheet of kit to look at. There's Amazon links on there so you can go straight to it, or eBay links, whatever else. Because we want to make this as easy as possible for you. So rather than leaving it down to you to research, we're going to come up with a plan of going, if you're going to buy lighting for this budget, and this budget, same with sound, same with cameras as well. So you can literally click on the link, do your research. If you're happy with it, go and buy it or buy something similar. It's one way that we're trying to remove even more friction. Because if we ask you to do your own research, it's going to take a lot of time. You run a business, you don't want this to then cause another headache within that workflow. So. And
there's a lot of jargon is the other thing.
Hell of a lot. You just said gain and equalizer. Most people are going to be looking going, what the hell's he on about? But again, we can talk about that in the resource packs as well. This episode is not about breaking down every single aspect of every piece of kit, because there's so many different variables. We'll be here for 3 days. We can maybe charge for a workshop on that at some point for 3 days. But for now, yes, we are going to provide you that information. So you've got the kit. Let's pretend whether it's 2 people or a 1-person setup. What are you going to do with that? How are you going to record that? I'm going to hand that over to you, because you've got a bit more experience on that.
So I'm a massive fan of online studios. So some people might just record on a camera and then upload the files into an editing software. I personally prefer the online studio experience, because there are so many features that remove more friction, that help you out within that. So the 2 that I'm really, really familiar with are Riverside and StreamYard, and we will absolutely try and find some other ones as well if people don't like those. But I started off on StreamYard and then moved more recently to Riverside.
Why is that?
So StreamYard was really, really good for if you're streaming live, not as good for if you're recording podcasts that are going to go live later.
which you can then edit and everything else.
Yeah. So within Riverside, they have a really, really good editor. They've got loads of AI tools, stuff like you can remove ums and ahs and different things like that. You can speed up the pace, and you can actually also dub your voice in AI and stuff like that. So if I meant to say, I'm going to do a video podcast, and I said, I'm going to do a blah, blah podcast, I would then just edit that out and it would dub with my voice, which is mind blowing.
I'd be more concerned if you're doing a podcast and saying booba podcast, to be honest.
Sometimes you stumble. But Riverside and StreamYard are really, really good ways. So even if we were here in person right now together, and we didn't have like a really, really good camera, and we were doing it from like a webcam or a cheaper camera, we could actually go into the studio, connect that to Riverside, connect the camera in, connect our microphones in, and actually do that together. And then all the editing and stuff like that happens in the cloud, as opposed to having to download files, upload files, do all the things like that. So that's a really big advantage. And also Riverside can connect into things like Spotify for podcasters and send the podcast once you're done straight away into there, and different things like that as well. So it's really, really like a holistic recording and editing experience. So that's why I use things like Riverside or StreamYard for my studio.
But those bits of software are tailored specifically for podcasters, whereas people using, dare I say it, Zoom.
Yeah.
You can use Zoom, obviously, to do a podcast, but you are taking away half of many of the features that Riverside have already got for you podcasting in the first place.
So for example, with Zoom, you kind of get what you get. You get that side-by-side view. Within something like Riverside, and I think even StreamYard, what you can do is you can switch the people around. You can make it from 9:16, so like widescreen YouTube video, to a 16:9, which is widescreen, to a 9:16, which is like a reel or a YouTube short. You have loads of control over what you do with the videos. Each video is separate almost by itself within Riverside, and you can control them a lot. Within Zoom, it's a little bit harder to do that. You've got to get into slightly more complicated things with Adobe Pro and things like that, or Premiere Pro.
But it was never built for that.
No.
It was never built for podcasting. No. It was built for streaming, connecting with other people, and having meetings and things like that. Whereas I say Riverside, and again, you've got to pay for Riverside. Yeah. We'll mention that as well, but it's not a huge amount of money for the features you get dedicated to podcasters.
They even do stuff like, AI show notes and different things like that to help you to get your podcast away. They do some magic clips, I think, as well, where it will chunk up your video for you. So there's loads of things in there, and they're always trying to make things easier for people. That's really why they exist.
And the good thing is, the more and more podcasts are appearing, more and more people are using Riverside, the more and more money they have to then reinvest. And I have seen that, like literally every week there's a new feature coming out. Yeah. For podcasters to make their lives easier. Yeah. And as much as you're paying a monthly subscription, which I can't remember how much it is.
$29 a month for the Pro package. For
the Pro package. That's got everything in it. We're not ambassadors for Riverside. I have nothing to do with it, but it's just software out there for podcasters. And the good thing is the amount of time you save compared to then putting that into an editing suite and doing everything else that Riverside can already do within the same ecosystem is huge. You're going to save way more than that. So.
Yeah, and just to be like really clear about it, so I'm part of the product partners for Riverside, which isn't a paid thing, but what they're really good at is community. So they have a community of people who, when they're like, I'm thinking about putting in this feature, they'll ask us as the people who use Riverside loads. We'll test it and we'll give them feedback, and that's how they keep getting better, is because they have really engaged people. I use it every day pretty much. So they come and they ask us, like, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? So that's my affiliation with Riverside. It's not like a paid thing or anything like that. It's just that they have ways that I can give feedback, so I can get stuff that I want, And I've
noticed that because they've got a real open door policy, haven't they, in terms of building that community and saying, we want to work with the people using our software. Yeah. Tell us what you want, as opposed to we'll build it and hopefully you guys like it. Yeah. Which doesn't make any sense for any business. No. Even within our own studio, we're always asking feedback. If you want something built, let us know, because we'll build it to you. But Riverside is doing it on a global scale. Yeah. And they're smashing it, aren't they?
Yeah.
Smashing it. StreamYard, I've never used it, in all honesty. Okay. Riverside I have. Which one would you prefer? To the everyday podcaster, do you recommend starting on StreamYard, moving to Riverside, or just go straight to Riverside?
I think if there is a streaming element to what you do, StreamYard has an edge in streaming. Fine. So Riverside, you can stream on it and things like that. But for example, within StreamYard, all the comments that are happening from the different platforms come into StreamYard, and you can reply to them in StreamYard. With Riverside, if you want to reply to YouTube, you have to go to YouTube. If you want to reply to Facebook, you have to go to Facebook. StreamYard brings that all together. But if you are doing a podcast that doesn't have any streaming, I would 100% say Riverside.
Okay, so we're Podfathers, so sod StreamYard. Go Riverside. That's what you just said. Okay, fine. Okay, so editing-wise, you touched on that earlier. Riverside has got built-in editing tools.
Yeah.
I've explored it a little bit because obviously we do some live streaming from the studio. What else can you use?
So some people, and quite a lot of people, love Descript, I think it's called. I tried it and I didn't get on with it personally, but there's probably a certain way that my brain works that meant that me and Descript weren't compatible.
Is it a bit like your Shure mic? You didn't know how to use it?
100% like that. 100% like that. But lots of people have really, really good success with it, which is why I'm happy to talk about it. Like, people genuinely love it. So that's another one. It's got some AI empowerment in there. It does a lot of the captions and different things like that. I think it does like the zoom in, zoom out, switching the cameras, all that kind of stuff. So
keeping it dynamic, essentially.
Yeah.
Which is what you have to do.
Which is what you need to do. So Descript is meant to be really, really good for that. And then there was one that you mentioned earlier, Autopod.
Autopod is good. I've used it 2 or 3 times in the studio. We generally like full control of our editing workflow. But essentially you put your mic, you attach your mic to a camera. So if you've got 3 people, they have their independent cameras with their independent microphones. And as soon as I start speaking, the editing software will automatically switch to that camera angle. So you can now multicam 7 or 8 people in the fact that you've just uploaded the video, and Autopod does everything for you.
That's amazing.
We have no affiliation to Autopod. We have no affiliate links, nothing like that. But if you're going to do multicam editing, multiple interviews, it's a very cool piece of kit. And again, it's a bit like Riverside. They're continually trying to upgrade their systems. They're always asking for feedback. It's not a huge amount of money either. But yeah, we like Premiere Pro.
Okay.
We love having full control of the entire zooming in, zooming out, all the split screens, everything else. Because again, I come from a filmmaking, video production background. I like control. At some point, I will give more control to AI. That's not to say we don't use AI. We still use things like, there's free software out there. You can use CapCut, brilliant piece of software to add captions. There's a captions app as well. So when we've done what we need to do, we can drop it into something like that, add the captions in, make it more dynamic. But yeah, they're kind of what we stick to. And I think you mentioned DaVinci as well, didn't you?
So DaVinci Resolve is probably slightly lower class than Adobe Premiere Pro, but it's got a lot of those features. It gives you a lot of control, but there's a free version that's really, really powerful.
Yeah, I think we use DaVinci for things like color grading. It's probably the most powerful system out there, way better than Premiere Pro. But for things like editing, again, the workflow, we have Premiere Pro, then put into things like CapCut, captions as well. Works good.
So do you have the paid version of DaVinci or the free version?
Paid version.
Yeah, because I think the free version is like a little bit lower than Premiere Pro, but the full version I think is like ridiculously good.
Yeah, and for color grading, even the free version is world class. It's
really?
Absolutely incredible.
I don't really know what color grading is. Explain color grading for people that are listening.
Okay. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on it. So when we shoot on our cameras, broadcast quality cameras, we shoot in log or raw format. So it doesn't add what it thinks the color should be. It creates a flat profile. So there isn't a huge amount of color. We might even edit in what that looks like as a split screen. And then from that, you can actually just manipulate the colors even more. So you can make the oranges on this even brighter or even duller. You can change the color to blue if you particularly want to. So it gives you full control over that.
Wow.
So whereas a normal camera will put the colors it sees into it with its own interpretation, when you shoot log, you can then manipulate those colors. But that's not really podcasting. That is video production. So yeah.
Let's get back to podcasting.
Let's get back to podcasting. So yeah, DaVinci's amazing. Most of the people we talk to about podcasting or other podcast studios, they seem to just stick to Premiere Pro because it just has all the features in there. It's really easy to cut. You don't really need to color grade a huge amount. If you do, Premiere Pro can do that. And then once you've got that, it's where you then take it from there, whether you put it into AI, which I think we've got next on our list as well, which can then add all your captions in or add other dynamic zooms and transitions and all the fancy stuff. So
I'm personally a massive fan of AI. I think the Terminator stuff takes it a little bit far for me, but I think that where we're at right now, there are so many tools that are really, really helpful. So we can talk a little bit about those right now. So there are some clips that help you to make, there are some softwares that help you to make reels, for example. So you load in your video into it, it will go through the transcript, try and get the context, understand which bits are exciting, and then cut those for you. So I personally have used Opus and GetMunch. So I think they're both like some of the top ones, but Opus for me is by far the better one. It understands virality a little bit better than GetMunch.
It's sometimes a little bit off still.
Of course. But it gives you like, let's say you record for an hour, it gives you maybe 30 clips, and then you can pick the top 3, 4, 5, and it also grades them for you. So it says this one might be like a 60 out of 100, this one is a 99 or whatever it is, and it does kind of try and understand that a little bit.
Because it's got the topical points from the transcription, so it knows what to pick out that's entertaining and funny and or valuable or prophetic.
Exactly.
I don't 100% trust it like any AI, but it does give you a good understanding. And also I think editing is the biggest barrier for people starting podcasts.
Agreed.
And they are terrified of it because you don't normally need to edit in your everyday business life.
Yeah.
And it does end up being a bottleneck. So you kind of do this process, you do the research, you do your filming, that's kind of straightforward, and then you get it into the edit and go, now what? Now what do we do? And then you don't want to then pay for an editor, which is why AI is, you should be utilizing it.
100%.
Because for a monthly subscription fee, you can literally take what you've shot, put it into some AI software thing, and it can edit it for you. And then you can then take that further by then adding captions and turning it into reels and shorts. So if you are thinking about doing a podcast, and if the editing workflow is the bottleneck for you, read our cheat sheet, because we're going to give you so many bits of software you can use that will take that headache away from you, and it will do it for you.
And I think your point around you can't 100% trust it is always so true. Like, we're still quite early in AI. Maybe in the future it will be like that, but right now you definitely can't trust it. For me, it gets you maybe 80% of the way there, but you still have to like check. And that last 20% is a really important 20% because that's the human part. That's the part that lets me know if I was watching this, actually I'd want an extra 2 words in there or an extra 2 words at the end. Like, that's the human part, and that's what is so important. So it's not just you put it in there and then you forget it. You still have to have some level of understanding to then tweak it, and that's what we need to be developing as well.
Yeah, and I think even that's fairly subjective, because I had a meeting with a business owner, I think last week or the week before, and he made a good point. He said, even if I gave that task to one of my employees, they're not going to get it 100% right. They're still going to be at 70%, but I've just utilised all of their time that I'm paying them for. And I've still got to do the 20% myself, because it's a very subjective view.
That's interesting.
What's important to them might not be important. So
that's very interesting.
So that's why AI is kind of on par. It's just very subjective, isn't it? And as business owners and podcasters, we want full control of that final or the final say and what that looks like and what's important to us. So yes, I don't trust AI, but maybe I don't necessarily trust anybody else to make those decisions either. But I trust my editor, because he's going to be editing this video. So he's going to do a fantastic... I fully trust him. And then you've got tons and tons of content. Then what do you do with it? So in terms of repurposing the content you've done from this 1 hour, 45-minute episode, whatever it is, how else can you utilize that content?
So there's this one tool that I really like called Cast Magic.
I've never used it. I've literally heard about it this morning when you told me. So tell us more.
So you take your transcript or your audio or your video. You can even just put in like a YouTube link. It will go through everything, transcribe it, and it will do stuff like give you a play-by-play of who said what. It will then also give you things like 10 YouTube titles for you to choose from. It will give you a newsletter that you can send out to your list. It will give you blog posts. It will give you, if you wanted to then use it as a discussion, it will give you discussion points. It will give you your keywords, your key questions. At this point of the podcast, this was really interesting as a hook. It will give you quotes. And then you can also give it prompts as well. So you can say, I really like, the High Performance Podcast. Here's an example of their episode description. Write an episode description for me like this,
in that tone
and that style, and it gives you all that stuff. So it's really, really powerful about taking audio and video and turning that into written content that then you can then send out to people. So
newsletters, blogs. So if that generates one more customer because they've read your blog rather than watched the entire video,
exactly.
Again, you're treating it as content is king.
Content is king. Yeah, exactly.
How much would you have had to pay for that 5 years ago to have all of that done for you?
Yeah.
And do you think that's why the rise of podcasts are now getting bigger and bigger? Because it is so much more accessible.
Yeah.
The bottlenecks and the frictions now being removed. Yeah. You've got AI doing 30% of the work, 40% of the work. Equipment's getting better, phones are getting better. So actually, the entry point to creating a podcast isn't that difficult.
No. And I think also because people are way more familiar with creating content than they used to be.
Because we're surrounded by it.
Instagram, people are so familiar with taking a picture, adding the filter, doing all the stuff and uploading it. And I think someone said that before, if you wanted to have a show, you needed permission. You'd need to go to the BBC or ITV or Sky and say, hey, I want to have a show and put it on your platform. But now things like YouTube have given the platforms to us we can choose. I don't need any permission. I can upload whatever broadly I want to and have my own show. So people are just so much more used to it.
But this is essentially what this is. We could call this a talk show.
Yeah.
It's essentially the same as a podcast, but yeah, it's a talk show. And we've got no permission from anyone.
No.
So, and again, as a business owner, relaying that back to why that's important to a business in terms of creating that content, removing the bottlenecks. You could be the marketing manager and the director of a company. You can sit here and talk about your passions or the new firmware updates or the new system or the new product you've just released. Not only can people watch the long form content, you can get the branding advantage of them watching the reels for 30 seconds, 45 seconds. You can then send out a newsletter with the show notes and transcription. You've then got a blog post as well off the back of that, off the sake of investing what? An hour filming, hour mapping out the plan of what you're going to discuss. Editing wise, maybe 20% of having that say over the top of AI. It's not a huge investment to create a shit ton of content, and it really is. That would cost you thousands of pounds.
And you're going to be spending the time one way or another, whether it's trying to reach out to customers or doing things like that. You might as well supercharge it with AI and doing content through video. It's just such an easier way to do it.
And you're complementing what you currently do anyway. So your sales team might still be making those phone calls, but actually if they can direct them to your Instagram page or your blog post, they're helping close more sales because you're building that relationship, you're building that community. So their job's a lot easier. And plus you've got the inbound inquiries coming in because they've seen your podcast or read your newsletter or your podcast, your blog post. So you're just making life for your entire business workflow a lot easier. But it's also just understanding what's out there already. And
one of the things that I've been thinking about as well is operations wise, how do you make some things smoother? So for example, when you're booking in guests, often it'll take 3 or 4 emails before you lock down a date and a time. So I use something called TidyCal, where it's like Calendly, but it's got a one-off payment and that's it, you're done for life. And you will always have it. And you can like take payments through and all that kind of stuff, but you can send them a link to your calendar. They can book in, it will give them all the links to the studios and all that kind of stuff. That's made life really, really easy for me. And then also I use Zapier.
So what you're saying is I'm getting ripped off by Calendly because I've been paying them for the last 18 months.
Yeah. I didn't want to say anything, but yeah, I'll send you a link to TidyCal. Don't worry.
How much is that?
$29.
What, lifetime?
Lifetime.
I feel and look like an idiot right now. Okay, fine. TidyCal it is. And then you've got Zapier on your list as well, which we absolutely love, but you can explain more about that.
So Zapier is like, all right, people call it Zapier or Zapier, I don't know which one
Potato,
it is.
potato. Yeah. That's fine.
So it's basically like an integration tool between different software. So let's say, for example, Gmail and YouTube. So that's a really bad one. But let's say you sent me an attachment of a video in an email. Zapier would pick up that email, find the attachment, download it, and then upload that to YouTube for you. So it connects between lots of different softwares and basically zaps one thing from one place to another. So you can do lots of really cool stuff, like say when a guest books in, do these 5 things. So send them an email, upload their headshot here, do this, do like, there's loads of different things that you can connect to one action triggering something. So if there are lots of things that you do over and over and over again, Zapier is perfect for taking over that side of things and just doing
automating it for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we love Zapier. We literally find any reason to use it and plug it in because there's so many different APIs that you can connect this system to that system, whether it's invoicing, going into Dropbox, or whether it's this doing that. We're doing it anyway, so we might as well pay the software to do that.
Yeah.
And I guess we can go into more details in the resource and the cheat sheets as to how to utilize that. And when it comes back to podcasting, there's so many different ways you can use that. Yeah. You've just mentioned about Gmail and to YouTube, but if you learn how to use a software, you can really get the most out of it.
Yeah, 100%. Like even, so some of the tools that we've been talking about now, some of them have integrations into Zapier, for example. So you could take something from Cast Magic once it's done all its bits and say, okay, take the blog post and actually upload it to my WordPress website. Take this and put it into MailChimp for my email. So like it could literally do all of those things that we were just talking about for you.
Yeah, and I think what people are scared of is the amount of research it takes to, and also create those plugins and those workflows. However, once you've done that, the amount of hours, days and weeks you spend or you save across a year, not having to repeat the same tasks is insane.
Yeah. It doesn't even take that long. To actually do it, to set up the Zapier, doesn't actually take that long.
Well, because the software's there. So you're saying, I use this software and I want it to translate across to this software.
Yeah.
So Zapier have taken care of all of that. You just say which software you want to do what.
Drag and drop.
And then you do the action point and the trigger.
Yeah.
It sounds like fairly complex stuff we're talking about. It really isn't, because once you learn it, it saves you so much time. Yeah. It's one of those things where people are just, I'm unsure, I've never used it, so it just seems a bit daunting in the first place. But just trust us, look into it.
Yeah. Well worth it.
It is well worth it. But I mean, I guess with Riverside, it's kind of got that automation already, hasn't it? So you've got those plugins where it will then automatically upload to Spotify for podcasters. And does it do YouTube as well?
I have asked them.
You have?
Yes.
I'm sure a lot of people have asked.
Yeah. So, well, not enough people actually. So they showed me their their ticketing thing, and not enough people have upvoted it yet. So ask Riverside to add YouTube, because they will do it if enough people vote for it.
I think that's a no-brainer, isn't it?
Yeah, but maybe lots of people, and this shows actually where we are with podcast and video, is that people are only just waking up to the fact that you can put your podcast on YouTube. That's still quite new in YouTube that they have that functionality, so people aren't really using it to the max potential. But that's an opportunity for someone who's listening to this to know that actually there's a bit of a gap there. YouTube are pushing podcasts, but a lot of podcasts aren't quite there yet.
But if you're starting now, you're going to be ahead of the game by the time they do actually push it.
Exactly. So recap: equipment, studios, editing, and AI. We're going to put all of that into a bit of a cheat sheet and links that you can access everything from that one place. And then what we want you to do is, when you get your home, you get your setup done, we want you to send us a picture or a video, and we can help to rate your setups and maybe give some feedback on ways that you can improve it as well.
We're not going to rip any to pieces, are we?
Depends on how we feel, I guess. No. Definitely not.
Depends if you're hungry or not. I think this is a great way of getting you guys engaged in what we're doing at Podfathers as well. So whether you've already got a studio set up or an office set up for your podcast, or you're about to do one based on the advice we've given you or the cheat sheets, send your photos in, send your videos in. We'll give you some feedback on how to change the lighting or how you can improve it.
And then our next episode, what's our next episode?
We think it's going to be monetization. I think it should be monetization, because actually if you understand the power of how much money you can make off of podcasts, whether it's tangible or intangible, especially when you were talking about business owners, people automatically think, well, monetize is in YouTube, so if every 1,000 views you get 35p or whatever rubbish they send you. We're talking about how much money your business can make by utilizing podcast content with what you already do.
Yeah.
So I think monetization is huge and something no one really thinks about a strategy for. And we had a big chat when you first came in. Yeah. And I was like, how are you going to monetize this idea you've got? And you're like, I don't know. I haven't thought about it. But it's literally the first question I asked, because if you're going to invest in doing a podcast, you need to make sure you're getting something out of it.
Yeah.
Whether that's tangible or intangible, you need to think about that strategy, because that's what's going to make you continue with this journey.
Yeah.
Rather than after 3 episodes going, I've run out of money, can't invest in the studio setup, or I've wasted all this money on this kit, I'm not really utilizing it. So you need to make sure the money's coming back to your brand.
Agreed.
So we're going to give you tons of ideas on that. So tune in for the next episode. Follow, like, subscribe, send us some DMs, send us some emails, and we'll see you on the next episode.
See you next time.